If you think lights out means lights out, you might be right. But sometimes it means something else entirely, something like echoes. And now introducing echoes from Thunder's Rock. All my life, I've been hearing scary stories, but it was none until I started collecting them that I learned there are things that make for a really good horror story. So all the sound effects, the music, the ambience, it's all original to this adaptation. But in 2019, while stationed at Thunder's Rock Lighthouse, something happened that left him shaken. It changed his perspective, and when I heard it, I knew it would make a great horror story. The lighthouse isn't accessible by road. It's reached only by boat. You can visit during daylight hours, but overnight access is restricted. They unpacked tools, tested the generator, lubricated the beacon gears, checked the oil levels, swept up spiders and dead birds, inspected the foghorn setup, and discussed plans for the upcoming week. A heavy canvas sack, dripping greenish slime, was jammed in the mechanism. It smelled of algae, rotting, seaweed and stale decay. Who put it there? How did it get past the locked door, and why? Next morning, the blanket was gone. But that night, at 2:50, it happened again. Alex installed camera traps, furniture, crates, metal barrels, everything was thrown in front of the door. In static and hiss, a female voice whispered, "You can't leave. Watch the light." Mason quit the next day, submitted a short report, citing structural concerns, and never returned for debriefing. Alex stayed on, and when questioned by superiors, he admitted everything, the entire experience, the sleepless nights, the strange occurrences. But his supervisors saw no evidence of paranormal activity. They chalked it up to stress, isolation, and overwork. Alex was reassigned, and even though the paranormal element is hinted at, it remains ambiguous. We don't know what's truly behind the events. Alex insisted nobody touch the device. No way anyone could have gotten in, let alone used the sat phone without powering it on. We want him to win against whatever this thing is. And because Alex is a seasoned Coast Guard crewman, not easily intimidated, his terror becomes all the more palpable. It's almost like a metronome ticking away the hours. The night may be quiet, but some places refuse silence. He was jittery, unsettled, unable to keep still, haunted. He showed me a single photo snapped from his camera. Static butt in the center, just for one frame. You could barely make out a figure at the top of the beacon stairs, a shape that shouldn't belong. He told me, Thunder's Rock, it's not just a structure. It became a mindset, a presence, something bigger. I feel its shape in my dreams. Still, the message had been placed in the phone's call log at 12:03 a.m. that same day. Both men made a silent decision. They packed to leave. Still, at 2:50, they heard scraping. Slow, heavy footfalls descended the stairwell. Then silence. Alex peeked outside. Dawn broke, revealing new footprints leading from the shore to the tower. They were deep and distinct, clearly human. But how? But the recordings only showed black static. Every night at the same time, to 50 a.m., the cameras flickered, then cut out. 4 or 5 nights, they heard scraping slow, heavy footfalls descending the stairwell. Alex looked up, just as Mason stood at the base, staring blankly upward, eyes unfocused and cold. Neither of them had moved. Reaching into the darkness, they pulled the sack free, tossed it over the railing. Now let's talk about what makes it a horror story. Alex sent me these written notes, along with his detailed report of what happened. He described how isolation is key to the story. Here we see a hard-nosed, practical man stripped of his usual comforts and support systems, confronting something beyond his understanding and experience. After they went to sleep, it washed up the next morning on the rocks below, empty, leaving wet footprints trailing back toward the tower. Boats passing by offered friendly waves, and by nightfall, they fell into routine. And on the beach below, Alex spotted a second blanket, soaked and heavy, draped across the rocks. He felt a chill despite the heat. That evening, as the clock ticked toward 2:50, tension mounted. Again, the light froze. This time, instead of a sack, a child-sized blanket, soaked and heavy, was jamming the gears. Mason tried to reason it away. Wave-borne debris, perhaps. Impossible with the height and sealed windows. But he knew that, too. Then Mason began sleepwalking. Simple dinner, a check on the beacon at 9 p.m., an informal radio call home around 10:45, and bed early ship's bunk near the top of the tower, right under the beacon lens. And Alex, along with his partner, Mason, a young and eager crewman under his supervision, were tasked with a week-long maintenance shift, starting on the Friday afternoon of Labor Day weekend and ending the following Friday. But on night 3, at exactly 2:50 a.m., the boom of silence woke Alex. He bolted upright in bed, eyes slammed open. In the sudden hush, the sound of a heavy thump echoed from above, followed by a metallic clanking. Mason stirred beside him, equally alert, climbing the narrow metal stairwell. Each step echoed unnaturally. At the top, in the beacon chamber, the gears were still turning, but the light was frozen. Now I'm going to read a bit of what he wrote about what happened at Thunder Rock, a jagged rock outcrop 5 miles off the Massachusetts coast. In a moment, we'll talk about how it felt for him. Let's go back to the start, and then I'll add some details and impressions that he didn't include in his initial account. And this is one of those things. Thunder's Rock is fully automated, so their main jobs were minor repairs, cleaning up debris, maintaining the foghorn, checking the generator, and inspecting the equipment. There's no grid power, no running water, no modern comforts, just the beacon, a generator shed, storage space, and a spiral stairwell up through the tower. During their stay, boats can only land at high tide. Helicopter visits are brief and infrequent, so any supplies had to be brought in advance. Overnight, they're completely alone. This chilling tale was shared with me by my own brother Alex. I asked him if I could share it here. Alex is a Coast Guard chief. He's a no-nonsense be-the-book leader who's never been one for ghost stories or tales of the unexplained. In this first part, I want to present the facts, the setting, and the events. At the time, Alex was newly assigned to Thunder's Rock. The assignment was fairly simple. Their days passed quickly. Night 1 was quiet. Night 2. Alex and Mason stared at the sight before them, dumbfounded. Day 4 dawned clear and windless. The air hung heavy with humidity. Birds wheeled overhead. Alex found him in the generator shed at 4 a.m. inspecting the foghorn headlamp as if expecting to power it. By day 7, they'd broken locks and bolted the beacon chamber from the inside. On day 8, a garbled phone message came through the emergency sat phone just after midnight. When the boat arrived at dusk, both Alex and Mason were pale, jaw-tight in silence. Months later, I met him for coffee. So that's the story. He talked about realism. There's enough detail here to ground the story in reality. We get a sense of the lighthouse itself. Then there's repetition. Those nightly disturbances at precisely 2:50 a.m. build suspense and create a rhythm of fear. As for escalation, that's another important piece. From the jamming sax to the footsteps, the voices and the cameras, the incidents grow in intensity and finally, we have personal stakes. We follow a character we care about and root for him. What do you think? Have you ever experienced anything unexplainable? Something that stopped you in your tracks? Share your story in the comments.